What is going on, everybody? This is Tom coming back at you guys with another YouTube video, and today I have a good one for you. I have a Destiny 2 Crota's End raid guide for those who have not already done the raid or figured out how it works. Starting off, right off the bat, when you get into the raid, the first thing you're going to see is this floating sphere of light. And when you walk near it, you're going to get an interact that says pick up Chalice of Light, or it's just going to say Chalice of Light next to the interact button. When you do that, it's going to give you the corresponding buff, Chalice of Light. When you have Chalice of Light, there's going to be a bar underneath the words Chalice of Light that is slowly filling up. As you or your teammates get kills, it's going to fill up faster or more rapidly. When it gets to full, you're going to want to have one of your teammates take this off of you, interact with you to take the Chalice of Light away from you. When this leaves and your bar was full, you're going to get a different buff called Enlightened. You can use this buff to interact with the plate that you're standing on with the rest of your team to build this bridge in front of you. You're going to need to do this a couple more times to build the bridge. Once the bridge is built, you're good to cross and go down the elevator, but I will say there is a deep sight red border chest that you can get throughout this raid, and I would recommend getting it. The way to read what statues you're going to need to activate for it is in this first small section of the raid. So stick with me real quick and I'm going to tell you how you're going to want to do this. So if you come to the bridge right here, on the edge of the bridge, you're just going to want to stand and aim to the far left side of the map. You're going to see two statues up on a rock. One of them is going to be glowing, one of them is not. The important one is the one that is glowing. And then you're going to want to aim to the platform over to your right. Same thing, two statues. One's going to be glowing, one's not going to be glowing. And then you're going to want to aim directly below the bridge. And then one is going to be glowing and one is not going to be glowing. The three that are glowing are the three that you're going to need to activate throughout the raid. And I'm going to show you where they're located as you progress throughout the raid with me. So stay tuned for that. But that's all there is to this encounter. Feel free to drop down this elevator, which is the longest drop ever. Trust me when I say this, it's pretty goddamn long. But with that being said, you're ready to move on to the first encounter, Abyss. I'll see you there. Alright, taking a step on from there, welcome to the first encounter, Abyss. And this encounter is super simple. All you and your team are going to need to do is follow the path laid out in front of you by the lanterns. Along the way, you're going to see these little spots that say Preserve Chalice of Light. You're going to want to use these as much as possible because these activate the next set of lanterns in order for you to progress throughout the encounter. But with that being said, what you're going to need to do is once again get your teammates enlightened, keep them enlightened, keep cycling this Chalice of Light buff through your team as much as possible or as frequently as possible while getting your teammates enlightened, because getting your team enlightened is the key to turning on these lanterns, and these lanterns are going to allow you to lose your stacks of Weight of Darkness, which is important because that restricts your sprint, your double jump, your warlock jump, your titan jump. Whatever you use, it restricts it. You're not going to be able to do much with it anymore unless you use these lanterns. Getting enlightened near these lanterns will allow you to interact and enlighten the lantern itself, turning the lantern on, illuminating the area around you, and allowing you to lose these stacks of Weight of Darkness. Now, as you progress through this encounter, a couple more things you're going to want to watch out for. There are holes in the floor, very dangerous. A lot of people that use eager edge swords or other movement-based things, grapples, well skates, etc., tend to have a little bit of a tough time with these holes. Well skates are a bit of an exception, I'd like to say, but everyone else tends to fall in the holes a little bit. Even here, you just saw I got hit by one of the pendulums. That's the other thing you're going to want to watch out for. These things that just hang from the ceiling and smack you. They do a lot of damage. They get you one shot. They hurt. But those are the two main things you're going to want to watch out for. During this encounter, there's going to be a constant wave of thralls and other enemies chasing you. Just make sure you're staying on top of clearing them out as you make your way through this. But if you stick to the path, watch out for the holes in the pendulums, and don't sword into random things along the way, I'm sure you'll be fine. This encounter isn't super difficult in terms of, oh my god, there's so much stuff. It's just like, hey, there's a lot of stuff. You're going to need to watch out. If you stick to the path, you'll be fine. Some weapons I'd recommend, fusion rifles, SMGs, shotguns. You're going to want something close range in order to keep you safe in these really close life or death situations. The other thing I'd recommend is something that can do unstoppable damage. It's the main reason I said fusion rifle just before. Towards the end of the encounter, once you get to the plate at the end that you're going to need to enlighten to build another bridge, there are going to be unstoppable champions that spawn. They're not super strong, but you are going to want to stun them just to get them off the field faster. The other thing to mention is that there are going to be normal revenant ogres once you get to this plate, and they are going to be a very big menace because they can sneak up on you and your team and just knock you guys right off the plate or right off the map. And there's nothing you can really do about it. If you've used 3 or 4 reses on your way there, you may not have all the reses to grab whoever's fallen off the map or whatever. But that's all there really is to this encounter. Once you make it to the hill, make it up the hill, you're all set. You're just going to have to get to that plate, build the bridge, and that's really all there is. Once your team has made it across the bridge and you're ready to go, and you're making it down this hallway at the end, you're ready to make it on to the second encounter, which is called the bridge, and you'll be making another bridge. I'll see you there. Before your team starts the next encounter, real quick, there are the first 2 statues you're going to need to activate for the deep sight chest in this encounter room on this side of the bridge, and they're oriented in the manner of which you enter the room. So if you want the first one to be on the right side, because yours was glowing on the right side, you're going to want to go to this first room I show. But if yours was glowing on the left side first, you're going to want to go to the second room I show, which is on the other side of the room, because, you know, it's on the left and the first one was on the right. But with all of this being said and set, let's get ready to move on to the second encounter, build the bridge, and move on after that. Once you and your team are ready to direct your attention to the bridge, the first thing you're going to notice in this room is that the Chalice of Light is once again present. To start the encounter, you're going to want to pick up the Chalice of Light. The first person that picks this up is going to get enlightened. When they get enlightened, they're going to pass this buff off to someone else. So they're going to pass the Chalice of Light off to someone else on your team. And then they're going to take this enlightened buff and they're going to interact with the plate in the middle of the room, just like they did at the end of the last encounter, but this time you're building the bridge to get across to the end of the encounter. So, what you're going to want to do after that is you're going to want to continue cycling the Chalice of Light buff through your teammates. As they get enlightened, they're going to want to interact with the plate, so that second person is going to interact with the plate after they get enlightened as well. The third person, however, is not going to interact with the plate. The third person, when they get enlightened, is going to pass the chalice off to someone else, and then they're going to grab one of the swords from the sword bearer knight that's going to come out soon after the encounter starts, and they're going to cross the bridge that you have built with the rest of your team. This person that crosses first, you're going to want to have them be one of the more survivable members on your team, if not the most survivable member on your team. I'm not talking about someone that can place a well or something, because the well is going to drop the sword and kind of screw you over here. So you're going to want this person to just be able to hold their own. And once they get across the bridge, they're going to be met with a bunch of enemies. They're red bar enemies, but they're still enemies. There's going to be a bunch of acolytes, one knight with a boomer, and one mini boss class knight that is called the Gatekeeper. This knight you're going to want to kill. Once you kill this Gatekeeper knight, it's going to be a little tough, but once you kill him, you're going to be prompted to preserve your sword in one of these little red pedestal things that are hidden throughout the area across the bridge. Once you do this, the next member of your team can cross the bridge. Once you have 3 members of your team that have crossed the bridge and killed their Gatekeeper knights, the people on the original side of the arena can get off their plates. Once these people are off their plates, the people on the other side of the arena, so not the one you started on, but the opposite side, are going to start building the bridge from there. I should mention now, before I get too far, that the third person or the second person across the bridge is going to want to bring the chalice of light across the bridge. And this is because on the other side of the arena, much like how in the last encounter, every here and there when you got to a lantern there was a spot to preserve the chalice of light, at the front of the other side of the arena, there's going to be a spot to preserve the chalice of light. This is how you keep all 6 of the members of your fire team alive throughout the entire encounter, and don't let anyone really die, so to say. Die to the mechanic of the encounter. That's not to say someone's not going to die because there were too many ads or because they just got unlucky and a barrier knight snuck up on them or something. But to continue onwards, once those 3 people are on the other side of the arena, they are going to start building the bridge from there. The 3 people on the original side of the arena that are now enlightened are going to one by one take swords across the bridge that has now been built from the other side of the arena and kill their gatekeeper knights that way. Once all 5 swords have been preserved and all the gatekeeper knights are dead, they're going to want to start getting teammates enlightened again, because after a short little bit of time, another set of gatekeeper knights is going to pop out, and you're going to have to deal with them in order to end the encounter. Once this last set of gatekeeper knights that pops out has been dealt with, the encounter is going to end, you're going to get your rewards, and you're ready to move on to this next little hallway puzzle afterwards. This one's a lot of fun. Get ready. I'll see you there. Before you leave the room, there are the deep sight statues on this side of the room as well. This is your second set out of 3, just so you know. And if you want to activate either one, they're going to be in the far corner of the room where the ads start to spawn once you've gotten all your players across the bridge. They're going to be accessible pretty easily. They're just going to be next to some spawn doors, so be careful of that. But otherwise, feel free to activate it whenever. You can do it during the encounter, after the encounter ends, whenever. As you see right here, I do it during the encounter. But with all of that being said, get ready for the hallway puzzle. I'll see you there. Alright, once you've gotten your deep sight chest and you're ready to move on to the hallway puzzle, you're going to be greeted once again with the chalice of light. The first thing you're going to want to do is pick it up and start running down the hallway, as you see in the background gameplay. Your objective here is to get one player on your team enlightened so they can pass through this green hive magic wall that's in front of you. Once they pass through this wall, they're going to want to kill the shrieker that's in the top of the arena. Doing that will knock down the wall and allow the rest of your team to pass through. After that, do the same thing again. Once you get that second wall down, you're going to be able to go all the way to the end of the hallway, deposit your chalice of light at the thing. Make sure not to drop down the hole at the end, because there is a secret chest that spawns in the hallway all the way at the end on the other side of the encounter room. Or not the encounter room, but the room where the encounter ends. There's going to be a little hallway that spawns at the end if no one on your team drops down the hole. You're going to run to the end of that hallway, get the secret chest, then you're free to drop down the hole as you please. But with all of this being done, get ready for the second to last encounter of the raid, Ear, and this one is a doozy. Once your team has dropped down the hole and you're all set with the flag, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to charge down this hallway into the Oversoul Throne Room. And this is the room where the last 2 encounters of the raid happen. So you're going to want to get familiar with this room. The first way to familiarize yourself with this room is to get used to the 2 towers on the outside of the map. One on the right side and one on the left side. These are home to 2 rooms, R2 and R3, and L2 and L3. These are important because later on, after you've killed all the enemies in the bottom area of the arena, you've pushed up into that middle castle area, and the other enemies have started spawning in there. You're going to need to go and run around and scout these towers. The reason is because once you've dealt with this castle area up above where you just entered the arena, and you've cleared out the shriekers blocking you off from the middle room, those green walls are going to drop, and you're going to have access to, once again, the Chalice of Light. This is going to be important because you're going to want to get teammates enlightened. This is going to allow them to pass through the green hive walls that are on R2 and R3 and L2 and L3 and kill the Shield Singer wizards if they are in there. This is important because killing the Shield Singer wizards is what sends you into a damage phase. But before we get that far, let's review what we know so far. We know that you need to clear out all the enemies in the room, infiltrate the room above where you just entered the arena, clear out everything in there to drop the green hive walls and get the Chalice of Light. Once you do that and you pick up the Chalice of Light, you're going to want to get teammates enlightened. Before that happens, you're going to want to send one teammate out to look at the left and the right tower to see if there are wizards or if there are shriekers in the tower rooms. The way they are going to be able to tell if there are wizards or if there are shriekers in these tower rooms is because on their minimap, they're going to see an enemy blip for wizard, which just takes up an entire section of your minimap. And if there's a shrieker, they're going to see a vehicle blip, which is a red circle that either has an arrow pointing up or an arrow pointing down, or no arrow, depending on if it's the same level as you, below you, or above you. But with this in mind, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to call out which rooms the Shield Singer wizards are in. L2, L3, L1, R1, R2, R3, or the room in the dead center, middle. And these room callouts are going to be important because you're going to want to organize your team in a way that's going to allow you to get the most damage off as possible. The way me and my team did it is we would send 2 people out to the rooms to get their wizards low and finisher ready, and then the third person would get their finisher ready wizard dead and call it out, and we would just finish the 2 wizards that we had, and then we'd move to damage. This is probably going to be the most optimal way to head into a damage phase because this gives you the most amount of time to do damage to the boss. Once you've gotten this far and you're doing damage to the boss, you're just going to want to repeat what you already have done, but add another person. Every time you have an extra damage phase, so after the first damage phase, there's going to be 4 wizards. And after the second damage phase, there's going to be 5 wizards. Because after every damage phase that you go through, there's going to be an extra Shield Singer wizard added to the encounter. This is to bump up the difficulty and just make things a little bit more complicated so that it's not just, oh, we did this already, just repeat it again. There's a little bit extra added to this to make it just a little bit more difficult. But beyond that, if you're rotating the Chalice of Light during the damage phase, there's really nothing to worry about. This encounter is going to be very, very, very easy. But with that being said, once you've killed Iryut and you've dealt with all of the Shield Singer wizard business, you're going to be ready to move on to the final encounter of the raid, Crota, the son of Oryx, and this one is a lot of fun. So get ready. This one is awesome. On from there, once your team has collected their loot from Iryut and they are ready to move on to the final encounter, you are going to want to crowd around this green crystal in the middle of the room at the back of the arena to summon Crota, the son of Oryx. Moving on from there, the first thing you're going to want to do is the exact opposite of what you did in the Iryut boss fight. So instead of moving from the bottom up around, you're going to want to move from the top middle room down and around to the bottom of the arena and clear out all the enemies in your way. On your way there, you're going to notice that in L3 and in R3, there are 2 sets of Boomer Knights, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to kill those Boomer Knights, not immediately, but at some point, relatively quickly, and they are going to spawn 2 Revenant Ogres and a Sword Bearer Knight in the middle of the room. Just like every other encounter in this raid, the Chalice of Light is present, and you are going to want to be juggling that with your team. But the important thing to remember here is that once you get to the bottom of the room and you pick up the Chalice of Light, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to exchange it in these glowing pools of light that clear the presence of Crota debuff that you're going to have throughout the entire encounter. Moving on from there, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have the person that gets enlightened first to pick up the sword that drops from killing that Sword Bearer Knight. That's why I said not to kill those boomers immediately. And you shouldn't kill that Sword Bearer Knight until that first person is ready to pick up the sword. Once that person has picked up the sword using their enlightened buff, they're going to want to shift their attention to Crota and do some damage to him with the sword, dealing damage to his overshield instead of his actual health. Once the first person is done, you're going to want to kill the boomers again, spawn another set of ogres and a swordbearer knight, do the same thing again with the second person that gets enlightened, and keep rotating the Chalice of Light buff throughout your team. Once the second person is enlightened and has the sword, you're going to want to have them grab it and just hold on to it and wait while the rest of your team gets enlightened. You're going to want to run through the rest of the rotation that you have set up until the last person in your fire team who has not grabbed Chalice of Light yet has picked it up before the DPS phase. This last person is just going to grab it and preserve it down below where you entered the room for the Ear fight, and then you're going to head to the damage phase. Using that second sword, you are going to want to bring Crota's shield all the way down and begin the damage phase. The best way that me and my team have found to hit Crota with the sword is a jumping slam attack immediately into the super. So as you land with the jumping slam, you're going to want to use your super attack, and that's going to cancel the slam animation and use the super. And then what you're going to want to do is use 2 normal heavy slams, and that's going to bring down just about half of Crota's shield. After that, once you've done that twice and you've moved into damage phase, you're going to want to use swords, fusion rifles, shotguns, arc solar supers, anything close range really to deal damage to this guy. And your goal here is to bait Crota to the back of the room where you started the encounter and then begin the damage phase. This is going to allow your entire fire team to stay together inside the well and do their damage thing while everyone is also staying alive and putting out the most damage that they possibly can. From here, what you're going to want to do is the people that got enlightened before the damage phase are going to want to expunge on Crota to do some extra damage. This is just going to give you a couple 100,000 extra damage to boost your fire team to where they need to be in order to be doing the damage phase. After this, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to shift to repeating what you just did before the damage phase. So once the damage phase ends and your team is all done and ready to go, you're going to want to repeat what you just did. Something I want to mention real quick that happens during the damage phase before it ends is Crota is going to do a real quick slam with his sword into the ground and knock everyone around. What you're going to want to do to avoid that is just spread out with your team before he does that and repeat the damage phase. Once the damage phase ends, you're going to want to grab the Chalice of Light from where you preserved it and just continue what you were doing. But moving on from that, some weapons I'd recommend for doing damage to Crota are obviously Lament, Falling Guillotine, any sword that has the vortex frame that can do the spin attack if you don't have Lament is good. Fusion rifles are really good. Merciless, Loaded Question, Deliverance are both really good options. Heritage, another really good option for a shotgun. You also have Legend of Acreus, Tractor Cannon are both phenomenal options here. But that's all I really have for DPS recommendations for this encounter. It's a very close and up personal damage phase. So be ready for him to be in your face and just doing damage to you the entire time you're doing damage to him. But that's all I really have for this raid guide. If you enjoyed the content and you enjoyed what you saw here, please do leave a like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me and it would help me know to make more of this content in the future. But with that being said, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.